Imagine a machine so advanced that it defied the laws of physics, a phantom of the skies that moved faster than a rifle bullet and flew so high that its pilots could see the curvature of the earth and the blackness of space. During the most tense decades of the Cold War, while the Soviet Union poured billions into radar systems and surface-to-air missiles designed to bring down any intruder, the United States unleashed a weapon that rendered their entire defense network obsolete. This was the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, an aircraft that didn't just fly, it dominated. For over 30 years, it soared over the most hostile territories on the planet, daring the enemy to take a shot. And they did over 4,000 missiles were launched at the Blackbird throughout its career. The result? Not a single one ever touched it. Every time a Soviet radar operator locked on to that signature black shape, and every time a missile roared into the sky, the American pilots had a simple, arrogant, and devastatingly effective response. They just pushed the throttle forward. By the time the missile reached its target altitude, the Blackbird was already miles away, leaving nothing but a sonic boom and a humiliated enemy in its wake. This is the story of how American genius created an airplane so fast that it literally outran its own problems, and how it left the Soviet military in a state of perpetual, helpless shock. The sheer audacity of the SR-71 began long before it ever left the ground. In the secretive halls of Lockheed's Skunk Works under the leadership of the legendary Clarence Kelly Johnson, to build a plane that could sustain Mach 3.2, the engineers had to solve problems that didn't even have names yet. At those speeds, friction with the air would heat the aircraft's skin to over 600 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt conventional aluminum like butter. The solution was titanium, a metal so difficult to work with that it required the invention of entirely new tools and manufacturing processes. But there was a delicious irony at the heart of this American triumph. The United States didn't have enough titanium. The world's largest supplier was, in fact, the Soviet Union. In one of the greatest intelligence coups of the century, the CIA set up a network of third-party front companies to buy the very metal the Soviets were producing, secretly shipping it to California to build the plane that would eventually haunt their own skies. The Soviets were literally providing the raw materials for the weapon that would humiliate them for the next 3 decades, a fact that would leave the Kremlin reeling once the truth finally emerged. On the ground, the Blackbird was a strange, temperamental beast that seemed almost broken. Because of the extreme heat it would encounter in flight, the titanium panels of the fuselage were designed to fit loosely, allowing for thermal expansion of several inches once the plane reached its cruising speed. This meant that while sitting on the tarmac, the SR-71 would leak its specialized JP-7 fuel through its seams, creating puddles that looked like a failure to the uninitiated. But to the Habus, the elite pilots and ground crews who operated it, this was simply the price of greatness. Once the Blackbird took off and accelerated, the heat of the friction would cause the metal to expand, sealing the tanks perfectly. It was a plane that only truly became whole when it was pushing the boundaries of human achievement. To fly it, pilots had to wear pressurized spacesuits, identical to those worn by astronauts, because at 85,000 feet, the atmosphere is so thin that a sudden loss of pressure would cause a human's blood to boil instantly. They weren't just pilots. They were explorers of the edge of the world, operating a machine that was more spaceship than airplane. The Soviet reaction to the Blackbird was one of pure, unadulterated frustration. When the SR-71 first began its missions, the Kremlin was convinced that their new MiG-25 Foxbat would be the Blackbird killer. The Foxbat was a massive, powerful interceptor designed specifically to chase down high-speed intruders. But the reality was a brutal lesson in American engineering. While the MiG-25 could reach Mach 3 in short bursts, doing so would often cause its engines to disintegrate, rendering the aircraft a total loss. The Blackbird, meanwhile, could cruise at Mach 3.2 for hours, its innovative J-58 engines actually becoming more efficient the faster it flew. Soviet pilots reported a sense of being hypnotized by the Blackbird's speed and altitude. They would scramble their best fighters, push their engines to the breaking point, and watch helplessly on their radar screens as the American Ghost simply pulled away, untouchable and indifferent to their efforts. One Soviet pilot, Mikhail Miyagi, recalled the shrill bell of the alarm that sounded whenever an SR-71 was detected, a sound that triggered an immediate burst of adrenaline and nervousness throughout the entire base, because they knew they were chasing a phantom they could never catch. Perhaps the most legendary display of this untouchability occurred in 1986 over the Barents Sea. A flight of 6 Soviet fighters was coordinated in a complex pop-up maneuver, a well-rehearsed plan designed to trap the Blackbird by having multiple interceptors approach from different angles and altitudes simultaneously. It was the best the Soviet Union had to offer a trap that should have been inescapable. But as the American crew detected the incoming threats on their electronic warfare systems, they didn't panic. They didn't turn back. They simply increased their speed and climbed higher. From their cockpit, 15 miles above the earth, the American pilots watched as the Soviet contrails struggled to reach them, falling short like waves hitting a cliff. The Blackbird didn't just survive the encounter, it mocked it. By the time the Soviet pilots had reached their maximum altitude, the SR-71 was already across the horizon, leaving the frustrated interceptors to return to their bases with empty missile rails and a crushing sense of inferiority. For the Americans, it was just another day at the office. For the Soviets, it was a reminder that their impenetrable airspace was a myth. The Blackbird's legacy isn't just about speed. It's about the psychological dominance of American ingenuity. Even the paint was a masterstroke of design. The iconic matte black finish wasn't just for stealth or aesthetics. It was a high emissivity coating designed to radiate the immense heat away from the airframe, a thermal radiator that allowed the plane to survive its own velocity. The SR-71 was a testament to what a nation could achieve when it refused to accept the word impossible. It flew overt missions, often with its USAF markings clearly visible, as if to tell the world that it had nothing to hide because no one could stop it anyway. When it finally retired in the late 1990s, it did so without ever having lost a single aircraft to enemy action. It remains to this day the fastest and highest-flying air-breathing manned aircraft in history. For the American people, the Blackbird is a symbol of a time when we reached for the stars and actually touched them, leaving our rivals in the dust. It stands as a monument to the fact that when the world tries to bring us down, our best response is to simply go faster, higher, and further than anyone ever thought possible. They knew we were there, but they couldn't touch us. The Blackbird was a ghost that humiliated the Kremlin with every mission. To ensure you never lose sight of the next secret operations that shaped our world, stamp this document and join our reconnaissance unit. The world may be full of distractions, but here we focus only on what truly matters: American greatness. Shutting down the engines, for now,